Excellent. So we're good to start. Okay, so welcome to Working After a Cancer Diagnosis. Before we kind of kick off the session, I think it might be useful if we just introduce ourselves. So I'll start and then pass on to the other guys. So I'm Hannah. I'm a volunteer network leader with Shine, but I'm also a facilitator and coach for some of the Shine programs. Pre my cancer diagnosis, which was blood cancer in 2014, I worked for a large PLC company. I had 18 months out of work and then went back to work on a phased return, which was a massive shock to the old system, despite going on a phased return. Unfortunately, then I took another 18 months out of work in 2017 due to a relapse. And at that point, I was then made redundant. So I'm now a self-employed consultant and facilitator, working with Shine and other people as well. But hopefully some of my experiences of going back into work can be shared as part of this session, and they might hopefully benefit a few of you. So I look forward to spending the next hour with you. So I shall pass over to Emma.
I'm Emma. I obviously work for Shine, but before that, so I was diagnosed with cancer in 2006. So that's 16 years ago now. But I was working in banking before that. So I had the really exciting job title of a regional risk and compliance manager. And that's what I did, spreadsheets, data trends, and going around different bank branches, checking for compliance and managing the risk in a massive sales environment. And, prior to my diagnosis, my career was my passion. I guess it was the thing I spent 70 hours a week doing. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but it felt like it. And I'd been working in the bank since I was 18, and I was like, I need a promotion every 2 years. I was one of the youngest ever branch managers back when I was 23, 24. And, that was what was really important. And when I was diagnosed, I was off work for 11 months for treatment. Went back to work like Hannah on a phased return that I learned a lot of lessons from, which might be useful to talk about. Basically, I did it wrong, so I can share that. And then obviously I started Shine a couple of years after that, and made some kind of different career choices about how I think really I was sitting in meetings, talking about risk and compliance management in retail banking, thinking, do you not know there are people having chemo today? Like, this isn't important anymore. I could do something different. So my experience is probably a bit more about that. I've got a bit of the corporate phased return stuff, but quite a lot of making those decisions to, change career focus and think about that. So hopefully that might be a helpful thing to talk about as well. So shall we go to Morag?
Yeah.
Hi everyone, so my name is Morag and I'm one of the Shine Network volunteer leaders for Shine Edinburgh, and hence the name Morag. It's don't hide it there. So I had also blood cancer, similar to Hannah, and it was in 2018, and I was off work for 11 months, and I worked for the NHS but in a non-clinical facing role in public health, and I had just left one post and I was about to move to a new post, and that's when I got ill. So while it was the same organisation, the team was all new. And I think that sort of drove me to think, I must get back to work as soon as possible, prove to this new team that I'm fabulous. So I was off work for 11 months and then phased back in far too quickly, and also discovered that I hated my new job. So that was a problem. So it was hard to work out what was me feeling terrible, because I just had a stem cell transplant and went back to work far too quickly and had a massive commute at the time as well. And what was just the fact that I absolutely hated this job, and I was going through rapid onset menopause. So great. Fortunately, but so 9 months into that new post, I was back working full time, 45 hours a week. I was approached by someone I used to work with who asked me to join her team. And at that point, I thought, here's an opportunity. Can I make it 4 days a week? And haven't looked back. Love that team. 30 hours a week is a dream. And now we're in pandemic land. We've stayed, worked from home, and that's made a huge difference not commuting. So I said, hopefully my experience, we'll talk over details later, but will help other people, because like Emma, I did it wrong. So yeah, I think that's me now.
Thank you, Morag. So just a quick outline, hopefully you can see a different slide on the screen. So just a quick outline of what we're hopefully going to cover in the next hour. Some of the typical issues and challenges people often face when returning to work. Your concerns or any experiences that you've got, and you'll hear our story. Hear from others about their experiences and the opportunity to ask some questions. So please do let us know your questions. You can open the forum at the end, but if you've got any questions as they come through, then please pop those in the chat, and then hopefully we can answer those for you as well. Pass over to Emma.
Oh, no, Morag.
So there's some stats for you. You do have a few stats here and there. It's always useful. So this is working after cancer diagnosis is particularly important for people in, the SHINE age group, 20s, 30s and 40s, because obviously we still have to work. We might have to work for 30 years, 40 years yet. I mean, God knows somebody get to retire these days, probably 75. And we also need to, some people might need to work during their treatment as well, because as much as I was fortunate because I had a public health sector job and they paid me quite well, a lot of people don't get paid while they're on or don't get much benefits when they're off work with cancer. We know that a lot of people also feel unable to work. I certainly couldn't have worked when I was on a treatment, and certainly when they finish to go back to work, they can't work in the same way. And in SHINE's 2019 small C survey, 40% said they were unable to work in the same way before their diagnosis, and 75% felt that the work had been negatively affected in some way. And I know I certainly felt that and still do. And this gels other research into the area of work and cancer. For example, the Work Foundation, which is another a charity, found that 64% of people diagnosed with cancer achieved successful and sustained return to work 2 to 3 years after diagnosis. So it wasn't exactly, finish treatment on Tuesday, back to work on Thursday. It's not quite as straightforward as that, unfortunately. And here's another good stat bomb for you. There's currently 2.5 million people in the UK living with cancer, but by 2030, there'll be over 4 million. So you think about that, that's a large portion that will be part of the workforce. And that's because cancer is increasingly becoming an illness which is either successfully cured or treated to allow someone to live with the atrophies for many years, like myself, or treated successfully, but which causes a variety of short-term or longer-term side effects. But some of that sounds a bit negative, but it's not all negative. I mean, cancer may affect your ability to work, but it doesn't also mean you have to give up work. And I certainly haven't, and really enjoy the job I have now.
Yeah, it's all right. I've got screens doing very strange things in the background here. So working after cancer, I think, we looked at the SHINE 2019 survey, and it listed many reasons why work had been negatively affected. Fatigue is a key issue here, as many patients feel that their boss and colleagues do not understand how they are physically or mentally feeling, or understand that fatigue is actually more than just a bit tired. And the reality is that tiredness is what people perceive fatigue to be, but we all know that that's actually very different. Many people say that they worry about justifying ongoing time off, with colleagues saying things like, I thought you were finished in treatment now, not having an awareness that cancer often requires long-term follow-up appointments and that side effects may need additional appointments. I know that's certainly true for me. I probably have really peaked out in hospital appointments in the last year. And I finished treatment back in 2017. So actually, I still need an awful lot of time to be able to attend follow-up appointments. I lack of confidence. It's gone wrong here. Confidence is also cited as the reason why people don't actually want to go back into work. So I think confidence can be really negatively affected as a result of having a significant amount of time out of work. And I certainly know that from when I went back to work, it was a bit like starting a new job, but with familiar surroundings and people, and actually not really knowing what had gone on for the last 18 months. But because people had continued working as they always had, they didn't really understand why I didn't have the missing pieces of the jigsaw in terms of perhaps some of the projects that had been going on. And so you kind of feel like you're sort of a bird's eye view of what's going on. But actually, in some ways, it'd be easier starting a new job because at least then you feel like you can ask the questions. What is going on with this today?
We're going backwards in the slides. Honestly, it isn't working after cancer because no one would employ us, and so we can't do Zoom.
I think I'll be sacked after this one.
I think I need the next one, Hannah.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Awesome. Yay. So I mean, one of the key things, I guess, is and we'll get to people's, you'll have a chance to kind of share any particular issues that are affecting you, but the reasons that going back to work or going back to work in the same way is difficult, the reasons for that are so varied, and it depends on quite a lot of things, and this slide's got a few different words on it, but and especially if you're thinking about, like I did, changing career, because the career I did before had a specific set of skills, and what of that is transferable, or what other things might I be able to do that use those skills, and do I need to learn anything else? But sometimes we worry about whether our career is limited by our experiences, so whether that's through a changing want or drive for career than you had before diagnosis, or whether it's a capability thing. We talked about ongoing fatigue, and we'll talk a bit about brain fog as well today, I think, but some of those issues are long lasting, and they're not something that disappears 6 months after treatment or 12 months after treatment, and so they can carry on affecting us for the rest of our career, and that can impact on that too. Job security might be something, I think, that I think Morag and I, or no, it was Hannah and I, were talking about that with, if you're in a job that's got a pension and sick pay, and the benefits that you might need if you were to be ill again, how difficult is it to make the decision to kind of leave some of those benefits behind for a different type of work, or to be happier in work, but not too stressed about losing that death in service benefit or pension, or 1 year's sick pay, which is what I managed to. I'm private medical insurance as well, actually. So there's a lot of reasons why we still want to work though. So the financial impacts, I think Morag's touched on that already, obviously. I mean, I remember when I was talking about going back to work, thinking, well, if they said I only had 2 years to live, then would I want to go back to this job? But if I am going to live for 20 years, I might need to think about a pension, or I might need to think about paying a mortgage. I might not just be able to spend all the money in my savings account, and carefully budget that until my time is up. So I think there's quite a wide range of kind of financial issues that also depend a lot on what family support you've got, what family responsibilities you have as well. So there's quite a lot to think about, and quite a lot of different issues that face everyone. I think we can go to the Morag slide now.
Yep, so I just thought we'd have a few quotes, and hopefully this might help make you think yourselves about what the kind of concerns you might have about either going back to work, or now you're back in work and you're sort of feeling the effects. So this is one of the ones from the Shine survey from 2019, which I think obviously is pre-pandemic, and I think things will be maybe a bit different now, I'm not sure. But this quote was, "My doctor said I should go back when I feel ready, but I'm not sure if I am. The trouble is I seem to have lost my confidence." And I think, it's just really common to find, you're losing your confidence. I certainly had. And so I was going back to, while it was the same organization, but an entirely different team. And I think I was not that confident about the job I was going to do. I also ended up not very good at either, which I shouldn't say, but I'm not a data analyst, okay? I discovered this. But it was so difficult at the time, going, how am I rubbish at this because of all my treatment not being well? Or am I rubbish at this because I don't like it, I'm not good at it? It turned out to be the latter, but it didn't help. It did muddy the waters. And I think as well, if your previous experience of ill health has just been, cough or a cold or flu, it's not the same. I think there's a slide coming up later where it's not like you get steadily better. A cough or a cold or flu, usually, day one you're a bit rubbish, and by day, then day 10 you're back at work, and then you still go up and up like a kind of straight line up in the air. But I think you have some really good days and some bad days, and it could depend on if you had a bad sleep or a good sleep, or if someone was mean to you in the morning commute. So that kind of stuff could really set me off. And I think the other thing as well, when I was working full time, when I was doing like 40 hours plus commute, I couldn't do anything else. I was so knackered that that was all I did, was work and nothing else. So I don't know if anybody else has any experiences that, or has any questions about that from the group. put your hand up or whatever you feel you wish to do. We're all thinking about it.
Yeah. I think while you think about your questions, or if you want to type or speak, but the we talk a lot about the kind of return to work process. So for people that have got perhaps a full-time job before diagnosis, that are then talking about making that return to that job. So the plan is to go back to work and do what you did before. That often people say, well, no one's actually telling me how many hours I should be working, or how long should it take me to get back to full time, if that's your aim. And I know, I mentioned that I did it wrong. I think my boss was so flexible with me that he said, you do what you want, use up all your holiday in your extra time, because I had loads left over. But if you need anything else, just let me know. And so I started off by doing 2 days a week. And then after 4 weeks, I was 3 days a week. After 5 weeks, 6, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. And before I know it, I was back to full time. I'd used up all my holiday, and then I worked a solid kind of 4 months without a day off. And, not that anyone's telling me I couldn't. I think it was the pressure on me. So I guess that's, if anybody else has experienced something like that, or just kind of considering how you might phase that return will be useful. Mira's got her hand up.
Sorry I was late.
No worries.
Lunch. Hi, Morag. Sorry, I can't see everyone. It's actually, you mentioned it. It's the going easy on yourself and feeling that what you should be doing versus what reality. So I've just increased my hours at work, but I'm still very much part-time. But when I did a little bit of part-time, I always caught up my hours around my appointments. And now I'm working a bit more, and I've actually just had an increase in appointments with physio and things recently. I actually decided to look at the kind of ill health, the chronic health policy, the policy for those with long-term conditions. I should add, I work for the NHS. So, but you're kind of like your own worst enemy. Because I know it said in that you should be given the same rights as full-timers. So time off for appointments because you've got a chronic illness. But I've just arranged my timetable to make sure that I just work when I'm not in an appointment. Mm-hmm. What do others do, really? And how do you stop feeling guilty for having time off for appointments?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in there. I work for the NHS as well, Mira, non-clinical. And
me too, non-clinical now as well.
So some people are flexible, but I certainly still I get my bloods done once every 3 months. I always do it 8:15 on a Monday morning, and then no one ever knows, because I start work, I'm back, because I work from home, I'm a GP, I'm always back at work starting at 8:30 like I normally do. No one would know done that, and that's me. I do that. I could do it any time in the morning, but I don't like to. And then my appointments, fortunately, are phone appointments now, and all I do is to my boss say, I don't want to do any calls on Thursday because I don't know when he's going to phone me. I don't want him to hang up, so I just don't do any. I do internal meetings, but I don't do any external meetings. So again, as much as I would say to them, just you work and you take your time off and do that, I don't do it. So yeah, it's difficult.
No, my boss is really aware, and he said, Mira, we know the situation. You've got to go to your appointments. But then he did also say, but we don't mind you working flexibly, so you can work whenever you want. If you want to work at the weekend, that's fine.
Oh, great! So thanks very much.
It's almost like the expectation is. Yeah. Well, the job needs to get done. Mm-hmm. So, and if you don't do it, you're just going to have to do it later.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It's really different. The pressure we put on ourselves is quite high, isn't it? And we might know, if we've got an employer that's got good policies, because a lot of employers don't have chronic health policies, or might have kind of really basic ill health policies, actually. If you're a small employer, they might not have got those, they might have written them without really thinking them through. But it reminds me a bit of the trying to go back to work, and you think you've got enough energy to do X number of hours. But actually, if you've got no energy to do anything else in your life, you're probably working too many hours, so there has to be a balance between like the amount of energy you commit to working and therefore how much you're able to do, as long as you're still able to go out for dinner now and then, or, you know, go see a friend, or do the kind of, and keep your, my favorite, your housework, you know, make sure that you've got time to do the housework, obviously. But yeah, it is a really difficult balance, and it's hard not to feel guilty about taking time off for appointments, especially if you can, you know, potentially, if you're part-time, you can try and schedule them on a day that you're not working.
Expect that of a full-timer, and I think if you were a full-timer, I feel maybe I put less pressure on myself, because I wouldn't work a Saturday to catch up for all the missed hours.
No, that's it, isn't it? And it's, yeah, it's thinking those things through, isn't it? I think there's a couple of comments actually as well, a couple of things in the chat I was going to try and get to, but yeah, Kat says treatment ending at the end of January, and already feeling the pressure about getting back to work. And I think, yeah, I mean, you're at the right point in time to learn from all of our mistakes, and hopefully, you know, it's good that it's prompted you to think about it a bit more deeply, because you know, the structure of your day and wanting to get back to work, that's a completely normal thing. And I, you know, for me, I thought, once I've gone back to work, everything will be fine, everything's normal again, and this cancer thing has just been like a little blip in my journey. I'm back to work, life is normal again, and I can kind of forget about everything that's just happened in the last 12 months. And you know, so I really did see getting back to work and getting back into that structure as like almost like a symbol that I was done with cancer. And so I guess that sometimes that might be where the pressure comes from as well. But you know,
when we talked the other day as well, I think we all normalized actually getting back to, and I use the word normal now, but not as I did then.
Yeah.
Or for me, signified getting back to work and getting my life back. It was a very naive take on it, and the reality of that situation soon came to light. I mean, I was actually quite lucky. My employer did actually put me in a phased return over 6 months. And I started on 2 hours and then 4 hours, because I work full time, but 2 hours and 4 hours a week. And then we moved up to like 10 hours a week. And then we got to 20 hours a week, and I plateaued at that for 3 months. But I did an hour and a half each way, which didn't help. And then I worked up to going full time, but even that was a struggle. And if somebody said that to me at the beginning of it, I was like, there's no way I need 6 months. I just kind of need a few weeks and I'll get back into the swing of things. But the reality of that situation actually was very different to how I'd imagined it as I'd been 18 months.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, I think as well, once you upped your hours, it's hard to drop them back down again. And I know, like my work were lovely, almost too lovely. And I was saying to my mum earlier, I was trying to think, it's like sometimes you need options so you can make choices. They didn't give me any options, just went. And then eventually, when I was like, I don't know why I won, I can barely think right now. I mean, why I went back to work so quickly. Eventually went, okay, we'll just phase you back over 6 weeks. Absolute disaster. And things, once you do that, you can't turn back. So like Emma did, I did all my annual leave. And what I would say is, if you've got an occupational health team or you've got a good manager, say, right, actually, if you have to make some sort of plan, because you do need some sort of plan, think, right, can we maybe make a plan for the first month and then review?
Yeah.
And then the next month and then reviews, a review, or every 2 weeks, even if a month is too long. But I think going 6 weeks back full time, bam, done, and kind of chasing at the office like you're someone with back pain, or, you know, that's what they're kind of used to, it's not going to work. But I think, yeah, I think that's what I would, if I had an employee now, that's what I would say, right, well, let's do a month, then see how you do after a month. And if it's too much, we can go down or up again. Because I think once you make that full plan, it's hard to deviate from it. But if you plan for deviation, if that makes sense, that's probably better.
Absolutely. And I think actually, Morag, that was exactly what I was going to say, is like having a flexible plan would probably be like specifically for Kat and for anyone else that's in a similar situation, that you know, that having those kind of open communication with whoever's in charge of your return to work is really important, and kind of taking a bit of time to reflect on, okay, I've managed to do X number of hours this week, but how do I actually feel? And is it that I can do these hours, but I'm not able to do anything else in my life? Or is it that actually I can cope with this and maybe I can try a few more? And having that flexibility and ability to kind of keep going back to it is, yeah, really key. to do, but the employers often don't know either. So it's not like there's there's not really a manual for employers dealing with people coming back after cancer treatment, and we're also individual into how we've reacted to treatment and how we respond to things. So there couldn't be a manual either, but so sometimes we have to take a bit of advocate for ourselves a bit more, and try and have those conversations. There's quite a lot of chat going on. If anybody wants to actually speak, then do. But Catherine says, sometimes it's less a loss of confidence and more a loss of a point. Yeah. As in, before cancer, you had a drive for work and you had work goals or ambitions, but now it's just working for money and the point of working seems to have disappeared. How do you find the point again? You're so right, Catherine. I think that's a lot of people feel similarly. Is that even a word? Because it's just when I went back to work, I'm in risk management and compliance. I loved it before, and I thought it was really important, and I was doing, I was making great contributions to the world in making sure that these banks had their risk processes under control. And then after cancer and after kind of starting Shine and doing that, I was like, actually, this isn't that important. And it was a struggle for me for a couple of years to kind of get my head around not being a bank manager anymore, and doing something different. But yeah, I think, and also sometimes you don't have the choice, because you need to earn money. You need to pay your bills still, and depending on the kind of work you were doing, that can have a big impact as well. But we've had I think there's a blog, actually, it might be a blog or it might be a podcast on our website. I can find out and send it to you, about just that kind of point, that it's how do you spend a bit of time reassessing what's important for you in terms of your goals and your aspirations. And if that means, actually, I've realized I'm not happy in this, so I'm going to retrain or I'm going to do something different, then that can be useful too. I think Laura's got her hand up. Do you want to come in, Laura?
Yeah, hi there, everybody. Hi. I think I just wanted to share really my experience is slightly different, only because I had cancer when I was younger, and then when I was at my uni as well. So I've always sort of had the ongoing effects all through my working life, I guess, and having to work around those. And I've made quite a lot of changes in terms of my work. And some of the key things, I made a career change because my original career just wasn't going to work for my energy levels and how it affected me, I guess, psychologically. But at the same time, I've always felt like I've always tried to find a job that brings me things that I really enjoy doing. And that's given me lots of exciting experiences along the way. And each time I kind of build on that, I guess. But I think one of the biggest things that's been a big challenge is always trying to keep up with everybody else that's around you, and the pressure you put on yourself. And it's been a long process to work out, to put yourself first, really, and what your needs are. But at the same time, having to work just because you have to. I don't have any other choice. But I think it's making sure you're doing a lot of reassessing in what you want from your work and what you want from your everyday life, but also trying to balance that with managing your health, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It's and I've know Laura, so I know some of her through her jobs and previous jobs, but I think you're right, like trying to find things that you enjoy is also really important, isn't it, for helping you with the motivation to do it, I guess. Sometimes it can be hard to motivate yourself to do a job that you hate. I think once you've been through a diagnosis and treatment as well, that becomes especially important, doesn't it, not to be spending hours and days doing something that doesn't interest you.
Well, I think also it can trigger anxiety, can't it, as well? I think that I went back to work and I was working crazy hours, and then I relapsed. I kind of wonder whether the two are related. I'll never know. But the anxiety that was coming from going back to work for a second time for me was huge, because I knew I couldn't go back to working how I used to, but I didn't really know then what going back to work looked like. I gave myself a little challenge, because actually I've struggled to make decisions since being ill, because like there is the financial impact and there are other things, but set myself a challenge which is called happy. And I have to ask myself, if it's not making me happy, then what is it providing? So in reality, the ironing's never going to make me happy, but if I don't do the ironing, I'll probably be a bit crinkled. But in work, if it's not making me happy, is it kind of filling that need for finances and kind of doing that in the short term? Or actually, if not, then what changes do I need to make to actually enable me to feel more comfortable with what I'm doing? And I guess it's a way of me questioning myself without sort of being too irrational with perhaps, or being hard on myself. I guess it's a kind of way of making myself ask myself questions. And I actually have happy written in my office some days, and I'm like, really, I'm not very happy today, and maybe need to make some changes, but I guess it makes me question what I'm doing, is what I'm saying in a very long way.
I think that's really good. It's having that.
Practical and you've got to be practical to pay the bills, but also you've got to be miserable for 40 years or 10 years or 5 years or 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's balance. Yeah, sorry, Emma.
That's right. There's quite a lot of chat in the chat box.
Yeah,
I was just going to go through some of those, but I'm up to Nicola now, and there's like another 12 or something after that. So, but Nicola's talking about that finished active treatment October the 11th. Congratulations. Planning on going back to work in January. Primary school teacher and wish to go back full time, but I'm really nervous and don't feel confident. My head is great and has spoken about a phased return over a half term, 6 weeks, in the hope that after the February half term, I'll then be full time. Is it too optimistic? Ooh, the $1 million question, Nicola. I think going back to what we just said about having that phased return plan being flexible is great. And we need to be aware of what we're doing, but I do know some people that have managed to go back to work. They've done their kind of phased return in 3 weeks. They've gone back, everything's fine, and they're okay. That's not to say that everyone won't be able to do that. I think what I would suggest, Nicola, if you're not already part of our Facebook group, there are loads of teachers in our closed Facebook group, and I think you could specifically ask the question. And I know that often, I'm not a teacher, never have been, but I know that there are often conversations about the unique pressures of being a teacher, and if you're committed to being full-time, like what that actually means. And it could be worth kind of getting some specific experiences from other teachers. But I think if you can, there's nothing wrong with having a 6-week plan, but I would try and maybe have a chat with your head about adding some flexibility in that, or at least some review points, so that after a couple of weeks you can see how you're doing, and after 3 weeks you can see how you're doing, and keep kind of balancing that. I think would be
a physical job, teaching. That's simple, it's physical. Yeah.
Especially primary school, that herding children. But that's why I've never done it. I'm not very good at it. I struggle to herd 2 nephews. I'm not going to manage a whole classroom of hats off to any teachers out there. That's so there's a Liz has also said she's been off work for about 6 months. Had been off work for about 6 months prior to diagnosis, and keep having to tell work that something new is stopping me from going back. They're being really good, but I have a feeling at some point they're going to say enough. The cancer diagnosis has come with so much uncertainty, and it now feels that with some parental leave over the last 3 years that I've not worked more than I have since 2018. Yeah, I think, sometimes timing is, not something we control, is it? And if we've been off for other reasons and then are diagnosed, that can make it seem more difficult. We're not trying to do legal advice in this call, because it's a difficult topic. Everyone's situation is so different, but there, depending on your company's policies and sick leave policies and things, sometimes there is a point when we've been off too long and our job won't be held open for us. But that must be difficult to kind of keep having those conversations and not knowing what's coming up. I don't know if anybody else has got anything about, oh, Liz, did you want to speak? Did you want to say, I've got your hand up. Hi.
Hi.
Again, Liz.
Oh, that's weird. I can't actually see myself. So
Oh, no.
I just wanted to say, I guess, kind of on the back of that, is that it's more of a feeling. They're actually being very good, and part of the reason I've been off for so long has been related to another disability that I have. So it is definitely worth talking to them about things. If, you know, I think somebody else in the chat has talked about the Equality Act and protections under that. I think I work for the NHS, and in all honesty, I think it would be quite difficult for them to end my contract because I've had cancer, even though I've had lots of other things going on this year. And yeah, I won't go willingly, but I think you know, I do love my job. I do feel that there's purpose in it, and even my dad was like, you know, it'd be okay if you didn't want to go back to it, and you know, you can come up with other plans, but I really do. But I'm also not in a rush. I've got to get myself well, and a lot of the reason that I was off in the first place was burnout from, like I said, other health conditions, other situations in my life that have been going on. And it's really, in some ways I'm lucky because I've had that experience before my diagnosis, that right now it's all about my health and work can wait. And I've also burnt out of another job previously and changed direction. You know, kind of went from I'm a doctor, was working clinically, completely, literally nearly killed me. I've taken a year out, done something completely different. I've come back into medical training, but in a non-clinical field, and I'm also in public health like Morag. But again, it's really been a lesson in, you know, you've only got one life and you've got to put yourself first, and work isn't the be all and end all, and your worth in the world isn't related to what you do for a job. You know, it might be, you know, there is, especially amongst doctors, that kind of I'm saving the world complex. Well, actually you can't do that if you're broken. So you've got to look after yourself before anything else. And, you know, I don't, obviously, I've only just had my diagnosis last month, and I don't know what is to come. I have no idea yet. I haven't had my staging. I haven't had anything to tell me whether I'm going to need chemo or not, or whether it can be dealt with surgically or anything like that. At the end of the day, actually, the experiences I've had over the last 3 years have meant I'm actually able to take that a little bit in my stride. I'm worried about I hate uncertainty, and I want to know stuff, but at the same time, I'm like, actually, work is on the bottom of my list of things to worry about. Because actually what I need to focus on now is being well enough to eventually get back to work. And if I'm never well enough to go back to work, I feel okay about that as well. Like,
that's big stuff to think about, isn't it? It's big, you know. That sounds like, obviously you're really newly diagnosed, so you've got massive amounts of uncertainty kind of coming up as well. But to be, you know, I think there's big things to think about, and I think maybe if you've not been at work for a little while, then you've maybe had a chance to kind of think about that already a little bit. So yeah, good luck with whatever the plan is when you find it out
tomorrow, so that's going to be fun.
Oh gosh, okay. Yeah, happy Monday then. I think that's but yeah, I get, you know, there's benefit in kind of knowing the plan and understanding it, and then you get the whole other lot of uncertainty that comes with that. So but yeah, I hope everything goes well, and thanks for contributing there. I think I was just getting to Lauren's comment, and now she's got her hand up. So sorry, Mira, can I come back to you in a minute if I go to Lauren first?
Hiya. Hello. Sorry, I put a whole bunch of things in the chat, so I don't know which bits you particularly like. But I was just going to say that and you know, following on from what Liz just says, my advice, which I'm really terrible at taking myself, is to not beat yourself up about it. Particularly if the plan changes or the situation changes. So I beat myself up awfully about work and not being able to get back, and
realized I sort of put a lot on myself and judged myself for not sticking to the plan I had set out when I didn't know what was going to happen. But I was off for 4 months initially when I had my treatment, and I rushed back because I was on a short-term contract and I had things I really wanted to get done. You know, I'm very self-motivated for my own work, always have had to be, and I really, you know, literally thought, if I die, you know, when I was having my treatment, I'll be so pissed off that I didn't manage to get X, Y, and Z done. You know, all these things I really wanted to have achieved. And I rushed back, partly for financial reasons too, and I did it too quickly. And then a couple of years later, didn't have a recurrence or anything, but late effects had built up, and I was just so ill. And I burnt out. I started to burn out again, and I'm doing exactly the same again now, which is terrible. But I realized through lots of counseling and therapy that so much, you know, I've made it worse for myself by judging myself for not doing everything. And I get back into that cycle of working all the hours. I'm lucky I'm allowed to be very flexible with my hours, but that means boundaries are really out the window. And so the plan we've just come up with occupational health is this idea that maybe instead of going off on sick leave again, because I've burnt myself out completely, that I could do maybe 50% sick leave, 50% working for a period of time. And we make that a really strict boundary. So because mornings are worse for me, my pain is worse in the morning, sickness and all sorts of things, I will not work in the morning. Then I will do the afternoon, and then I will not work in the evening. I will not work at the weekends, and that is really, really hard for me. But reminding myself constantly that I didn't will myself to have cancer. This is not my fault.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It really, really sucks. It sucks for everybody. None of us asked for this, and it's done horrible things to our bodies, and it's changed our outlooks and situations so much. And we are covered. We are protected by that Equality Act. And I know my work at big organisations, they are very conscious of the fact that, you know, if they put too much pressure on you themselves, that actually, you know, they are treating you unfairly, and they are risking you having to leave work completely, you know, in tribunals, employment tribunals, all sorts of things that they, particularly larger organisations, are conscious of. So I just reach out and get that, ask for the help when you need it, and find out what your organisation can provide. And lots of people are scared of occupational health because they think that it will be sort of judging them and stopping them doing things, but actually they're there to protect you.
That absolutely. I think I've just seen Anna, I've just seen your questions from that saying, can we see your questions? And then I can see your direct one now. I couldn't see any earlier apart from the can you see my questions. I'm really sorry, I'm not sure what's
there's a question at the top. How many otherwise healthy stage 4s do you know go back to work?
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, that's the one I can see by direct. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, Anna. I mean, I do know, I mean, I think Morag said it earlier in one of the slides that you know, the cancer treatments and things have moved on massively in the last few decades, and there are many people that live well and healthily with a stage 4 diagnosis, and in lots of cases will go back to work. And you know, I know quite a few people that have an incurable diagnosis of some kind or another, that are back to work and are working full time. I think sometimes the decision making might be a bit more difficult, just about that, you know, if it's a job you hate, then maybe the decision's a bit more difficult. But yeah, there's certainly not a you know, if you have a stage 4 diagnosis or an incurable diagnosis, you'll never work again if you want to. I don't know if anybody else wants to come in on that. I don't want to out anyone as stage 4 or incurable.
So I'm not stage 4, but I think as a result of delivering some of the circles programs and breakout programs, you become quite aware that there's quite a lot of people that are living with stage 4 cancer diagnosis and are maybe not working quite as they were before, but are working to some extent, because for them that kind of normalizes the situation they find themselves in. Sorry, Morgan, go talk to you.
I was going to say, I'll let Mira speak, because I think she's probably got more experience of this than me. So it's, you wanting to, Mira, you wanting to share your story?
Oh yeah, sorry. Gosh, so many things I want to reply to, but Lauren, thank you for sharing, and big hugs to you. Liz, I think it was Liz who's the NHS clinician. Just wanted to add my experience. I was a clinician in the NHS as well, and I had to take early retirement because I ended up having 3 years off in total when I had mat leave initially, then I had treatment when I was diagnosed, paid sick leave, and then I ended up having a year of zero pay as well because I still wasn't well enough to go back. And it was at the end of that, my team were really supportive because they knew I wanted to go back. But it was at the end of that year, my consultant said, I really don't think you're going to go back to clinical work. So that's when my boss started talking about termination of contract, because the words they used was, you're employed in a clinical role and you're not fit to do that. So we need to fill that clinical role. They were really good. They tried to find sideways moves. There weren't that many secondments in the NHS in those days. And I didn't really know about my rights. But one thing that they were really good at was making sure that I did speak to Oki Health, who were really supportive, and they were the ones who said, have you looked at tier 1 NHS pensions and all of that? And I got the union involved to get some advice. In hindsight, I probably should have fought harder to stay on as an employee. But yeah, it might be worth just finding out in advance really what legally, where you stand, what your options are, to make sure that you're forewarned, forearmed. They did suggest like public health as a non-clinical role for me, but there were no like registrar training programs at the time. So, and I've managed to take a sideways move. Just also to come back to someone else's point about, where do you want to work? I then had careers coaching to help me kind of find new direction. And I found that really helpful to work out where my new values were and where I wanted to put my energy into work-wise. So yeah, but if anyone wants to speak to me about NHS retirement, I can help.
Thanks, Mira. I think it's as Mira said, I think the key thing there is it's really important to know what your actual options are, because without knowing that, it's difficult to make a decision, isn't it? And sometimes especially if you're in the middle of treatment or just coming up to finishing treatment, we might not have enough energy to really advocate for ourselves and to be making those decisions that can have a massive impact on your future. So yeah, it's, if you can take time to like understand those options, do a bit of research. I think definitely if you've got kind of specific role-based questions, like when we were talking about teaching earlier, there are quite a few people, there are thousands of people in our Facebook group, and someone out there might have a similar job to you, and so they might be able to kind of share some of that advice as well. But I think definitely career coaching, and that even if you haven't got access to kind of coaches, there are some quite good resources online around exercises that you can do yourself just to think about what goals you might have, and kind of changing careers, of what your values are and what's important to you in your life, about how much you work or what type of work you do as well.
I think LinkedIn
Can I just
Learning
add
has
one thing?
Oh,
Sorry.
go on. Yeah.
Just to also, be mindful that your decision making at the time will be really emotionally driven. And I mentioned this to Emma yesterday. Like, I thought I was going to die a lot earlier, and that's probably why it was easier for me to make the decision to leave at that point. And now I'm with, you know, drug advances, Morag knows about that, we're on the same drug, but you know, now I'm thinking, oh, I actually do need a pension, possibly, potentially. I need to do something about. So yeah, just don't. I think I rushed into that decision really quickly.
Yeah.
Balancing risk is hard, because I was like, at first I was saying to Jimmy, I was like, should I just stop paying my pension? Because meh. But then I was like, maybe I'll just do it. And then what I can always do is cash out if I think. And now I saw my consultant, my new consultant, because I retired a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, well, hopefully we can just keep doing this until I retire. And I was like as in him retiring, I was like, he's about, hard to know the mask up. I was like, you look younger than me, so happy days.
No.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think Anna also asked me a question about, is it illegal to make me redundant after a relapse? In fairness to the employer I was working for at the time, they made a whole department. Ironically, I sat within the HR team, but it was a global organisation. So they made the whole HR team for that particular region redundant because they migrated those services into a different team. So I didn't fight it. They went through the fair processes, to be fair to them. And I wasn't the only person that was made redundant, but they did support me with that and offered me some coaching to enable me to get back into the workplace, which I did take. So whilst it wasn't ideal timing, to be fair to them, they did actually follow the right protocol. But actually, if I'm honest, I think it was probably one of the best things that happened to me, because actually I was really anxious about going back into the role because I was working crazy hours, delivering some big projects. So actually it worked out quite well for me, but I appreciate that for other people that might be more tricky. But to be fair, they did follow the right protocols.
Thanks, Anna. I'm just thinking we are like, I mean, these sessions seem to go so fast, but we have about 5 minutes left. So I'm just going to come to just make sure, try and scan through and make sure I haven't missed.
Whilst you do that, Emma, I'm just going to bring up a slide at the end as well.
I think I'd maybe go to the picture one, the one with that one. Oh, that one. Just to mention that Laura mentioned that large organizations often have good wellbeing support. So there's employee assistance programs in big corp companies. So if you have got one of those, like sometimes it's a great way to access counseling, but also sometimes other health related benefits. So things like gym memberships and you know, that's not what I was thinking about when I was going back to work, but I know, you know, if you're thinking about your physical health, or you know, there's some really great things available through employee assistance programs. That's a good shout, Laura.
Yeah.
And then I think
they also normally offer some form of counselling service as well, and a lot of those assistance programs. Yes. Actually, it might be telephone counselling to start with, but actually, if you do get the support in that way, and they feel that you benefit from face-to-face, a lot of them do actually then move you towards face-to-face counselling as well. People sort of forget about that being an option actually through that if you are struggling.
Yeah. And I think I'm just going to, Liz made a comment to Mira saying thanks for her comment, but saying that, hoping that as my job is desk-based, if my brain is working enough after all of this. And I think that's one of the quotes that we didn't get to today, is about, you know, we can call it brain fog or cancer-related cognitive impairment, I think is the correct phrase. But it's, you know, that's something that affects a lot of people, and we kind of blame it. You know, when you say, I feel like sometimes when we say brain fog or cancer brain, it's a bit like kind of baby brain. It's not really seen as anything serious, but actually, you know, that can have a massive impact on us. And it can be things like not being, you know, not getting the right words, which I do quite a lot, but I've just accepted that about myself now. You know, there are things that are ongoing. And, you know, sometimes it is worth, but I thought it was worth mentioning that. I know it was just a comment, Liz, but because I think other people might relate to that kind of.
Post-its are my new best friend. Everything gets written on a post-it if I'm on a call.
Yeah, it's finding new ways of doing things, isn't it? It's like, I mean, I know my memory is nowhere near as good as it was, and I could tell you lots of facts. I could tell you where I was going to be 3 weeks time, even though I covered like 12 branches, and now I've got no idea what I'm doing tomorrow. You know, it's I have to check my calendar. So it's having, you know, tools that can help you with those new abilities. And then I think Kat's talking about the impact on decision making. I spend most working days making decisions, and that is very anxiety inducing. I think, as well as thinking about the impact of the number of hours you're going to physically be at work, thinking about the energy it takes to do your job as well, you know, mentally, and you know, that can be, you might physically be able to go to work for 6 hours, but are you able to concentrate for 6 hours, or to make decisions if that's your role? I think we should be considering that as part of the kind of return to work. Oh, Maureen, have you answered Leanne's question?
I answered Leanne, but I hope it's maybe not massively detailed, but certainly I know Shine Edinburgh, Leanne's asking about trying to work with kind of a new post and a part-time post, and I know someone in Shine Edinburgh did that. She went bugger that to her old job and kind of took redundancy, and then thought, well, I'll try this. So she tried a home-based job. This is pre-COVID when nothing was that home-based, and when she did like 1 day a week, and then she thought that's fine, and then she asked for hours, and now 2 or 3 years on, she's now doing the first original part-time job, but like 2 or 3 days a week, and then another one she took up, and about one day a week. And it's sort of, because they're slightly different kind of roles, it kind of uses different parts of her brain. So if she's kind of tired from using that part of her brain for one job, it's only a couple of days, and then she's got a different job, and that seems to have worked for her really well. And it's kind of little bits and pieces. And again, she's very active on the Facebook groups. I'm sure if you posted a similar question, I don't want to out her because it's not my, but I'm sure if you posted, she would probably tell you more details about what she did.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, there's different struggles with going back to the same workplace. You've got, you know, things like talking to colleagues about what's happened, and they knew you before and know you now. Starting a new job gives you those kind of positives of being able to you know, not talk about things you don't want to talk about, or but again, you know, the pressures that people might not understand what you've been through, and you know, therefore if they would have been supportive, you might miss out on a bit of that. So we are 1 minute over time. I'm so sorry. I mean, I would just say to everyone, like, there's so many questions, and I'm sure there are some of you that haven't had time to get a question out or to respond to something. So please do have a look at the Facebook group. So if you're in Facebook, it's called Shine Young Adult Cancer Support. If you're not ready, you just have to answer a couple of questions and we can add you. But drop us an email or message us through the conference if you can't find it. But in there are, you know, like I said, thousands of other people, and some of them maybe have had similar experiences or similar jobs. And Hannah's just handily moved it to the slide here for where else you might get support. So obviously our website has a whole section on working after cancer with some podcasts and videos and things in there. Macmillan have quite a good lot of resources around your rights going back to work. ACAS is an organisation that are brilliant at getting into the nitty-gritty of your situation and telling you if something's being done wrong or if there's another way of going about it. And then Working with Cancer is a social enterprise that focuses on coaching. So they have resources on their website, but they also provide coaching. It's a social enterprise, it's not a charity, so you do have to pay for it. But depending on, you know, where you are in your experience, it might be worth chucking a few quid at that if you've got some to spare, because it can really help you. As other people have mentioned, the coaching can be really good. So I am sorry that we have run over. I'm going to let Hannah and Morag say goodbye as well. But before I do that, if you've been to any other sessions, you'll have already seen our poll. So I'm just launching the poll. It should take you 3 seconds. It's a star rating out of 5 for today's session, and then whether you would recommend this session to a friend or colleague. So if you can do that as we're saying goodbye, and then hopefully we'll see you at some other stuff. I'm myself at past I'm doing the Move Dance Feel session, which I've done for the last 2 years, and it's brilliant. So if you're up for a bit of moving around with no pressure, then join me for that. That's not what you do. That's not dancing.
Remind you that, Emma.
Yeah. So yeah, please do answer those questions in the poll if you can see that. And I'll let Hannah and Morag say goodbye as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your participation today. I think if there are any questions, as Emma said, like, just use the Facebook group and hopefully we can support you with some of those questions. But it's been a pleasure as always.
And I just echo what Hannah says. Thanks for coming along today, and said we'll keep an eye out in the Facebook group. So if any other questions come up, we'll do my best to answer them. I said, I think the key thing is just try not to force yourself to make a decision straight away. Sometimes take a bit of time to reflect, because I know when you're on kind of your cancer journey back to work, you're like, must do everything now, but don't try. I'm terrible at it, but try and just take a bit of time. You don't have to answer questions straight away. Have a to reflect on it.
I think people can't see the poll unless you stop sharing, Hannah. I think might be the
Some people have filled it in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I can't see that. That's fine. Then it's just mine. I can't see any filled in. So
yeah, there's 18 people completed it.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'll let you.
That's right.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We'll see you at the next session, hopefully.
Bye.